And let's bring in Asia Pacific Regional Director of the International Federation of Red Cross, Alexander Matheou, for more on this. Alexander, I know it's a busy time, so thank you for coming on. What are you hearing from Red Cross workers who are helping with these search and rescue efforts? How are the conditions in Myanmar right now?
Well, I was just in the area affected by the earthquake 2 weeks ago, and so I did manage to meet people there, and now we're able to hear from them about what they're seeing since the earthquake. There is a vast amount of destruction caused by this earthquake in Mandalay and Sagaing provinces of Myanmar. That would be a disaster in and of itself, but as your reporter just said, it's a crisis on top of a crisis because so much was already exacerbating vulnerability in Myanmar anyway. In Sagaing province, for example, it has a population of around 5.5 million. 1.4 of them are people displaced by conflict who are living in monasteries, really on the charity of others and just daily labor where they may get $1 a day. They are all now, if they've survived, are living on the street with really no way to protect themselves or their loved ones. It's very hot, there's no shelter, hospitals are damaged, and they're really in a very desperate situation.
The IFRC launched an emergency appeal for global solidarity to help in these rescue efforts, but U.S. help hasn't arrived in Myanmar yet. What do you make of that?
Well, that's not surprising, to be honest. It's not easy to deliver assistance to Myanmar. Now, the IFRC had pre-positioned stocks in place to work with the Myanmar Red Cross for about 8,000 families. That won't be enough, but it gives us something to deliver in the immediate days after the earthquake. Staff and volunteers of the Myanmar Red Cross are part of the search and rescue, providing first aid and trying to contribute to get shelter and water to people who need it most. Some international assistance has arrived. India, China, they've managed to send in some assistance, but it's not surprising that others are struggling. It's not easy to get visas. It's not easy to clear things from customs. And that is one of the reasons why, for all these years, actually, Myanmar has been amongst the top 10 most vulnerable countries in the world, but in some ways, one of the least supported, because it is so difficult to reach people there in crisis.
So how does this earthquake compare to others you've seen in the past? And what does Myanmar need most right now?
Well, the first days after an earthquake, you can imagine that the needs are really the basics, life-saving support. People are on the streets. It's very, very hot. There's no electricity, so water's not being pumped. There's a desperate need for drinking water. They need shade from the relentless heat. They need food. And if they're wounded or just even traumatized, which that's the very least they will be, they need medical support, and hospitals are overwhelmed with equipment and buildings damaged. So all those basics of survival, the search and rescue, the clean water, the provision of shelter, the provision of food, those are going to be the priorities for the coming weeks. But I would say it is so important not to stop there, because although this will be out of the news in a couple of weeks' time and people will forget and move on, the people who've lost their homes or their livelihoods there in Myanmar over the last 4 days, they will be feeling this earthquake for months and possibly years. So we in the IFRC, we want to stick it out for the long term. We've released our appeal. We'll focus on life-saving work in the coming days, but in the coming months, we'll focus on helping people restore their homes and their livelihoods.
All right, Asia Pacific Regional Director of the International Federation of Red Cross, Alexander Matheou, thank you.